Okay, well, a lot has happened. I've gotten going on the second scene and I got very lucky. So I expected that the second scene, before the outset, that I would do something like Gortais manages to reach the jungly viney area, and he will potentially run up against whatever forces are there. And if they would be something that he could potentially take out, he could engage them, which I know isn't what research missions are supposed to be about. But I figured if he has the chance, then the terms of the deal have changed. Pray that I do not alter them any further. So I figure whatever I need to do to get the second meaningful success, it doesn't really matter in the end to the mission. Well, it does, because if I don't succeed in the mission as written, it means I'll have some other positive outcome. But, I'm willing to live with that. So I went ahead and rolled the 3 random scene qualities, and I got a pond or lake, a valley, and an artifact or object. So instead of this being a jungly, viney area and that's that, it sounds like it's a hidden valley that's lush. And I added in this extra window dressing of lush undergrowth and tall trees and wildlife and birdsong and all sorts of lush vegetation and wildlife. So it sounds like it's an idyllic little place for our minions that I need to research, that Gortais needs to research to be there. So I went ahead and started with that one foe, knowing that there would be these minions there, and rolled a d10 and got six of these average minions at 3 points apiece. That's going to be 18 points of the encounter budget right there. So then I went ahead and rolled for the encounter budget, and I got a 1 and a 10. You multiply those two together, it's a measly 10-point encounter budget, and I've already got 18 of it taken up by the minions. Add to that the fact that this is a pulpy setting, and Gortais should be able to walk all over these guys. I had to think about what these minions would be. I made a quick roll and decided that it was large goblins, basically hobgoblins, and also then gave them a rationale, which randomly turned out to be a 14, which is drunk or drugged. I asked the follow-on question of, is there something that's growing here that's an intoxicant that these guys are into? And the answer came back yes, and it was a 10 against the growing plot stress of 17. So that dropped the plot stress down to 8. And the unexpected event that I rolled was to start or cease hostilities for foes. So that's kind of weird because the scene hasn't started yet, so there aren't any hostilities to start or cease. So I figured I'd see if I could interpret that with a yes-no question and asked, are these hobgoblins non-violent? And I came back with a gigantic no. So it sounds like this is all about starting hostilities, that this drugged group of average hobgoblins is extremely belligerent. And so we will see where things go from here. And that's how far I've gotten so far. I figure I'll play out the rest of this live because I think it's going to be short and sweet with any luck. So my plot stress was 8. With that question, it went up to 9. I have 6 average minions. Their net conflict is a 0, plus they're drunk or drugged, which is going to be a potential penalty for things like notice for them. I'm going to get a bonus for a window dressing potential bonus for sneaking because of the lush vegetation and all of that I wrote in. However, that will also give me a window dressing penalty against any ranged weapons. So these are not magical bonuses. This is just written into the window dressing, but because this is not an obstacle scene, it's not going to cause me any trouble for the encounter if I don't take the penalties and the bonuses. So what I'll do is I will have Gortais try to sneak up and ambush the hobgoblins. It's kind of a bummer that I won't really be able to use the small bow because I have to get into close range in order to engage because of the window dressing that I made, which is my own fault. But I expected there to be potentially a much larger contingent, and I thought I'd have to do a lot of subterfuge and sneaking, so be it. I'm also making the assumption that Gortais is going to be the first to know about the enemy force, about the minions. That I'm just assuming is correct because he knows there's something that's here, so he's going to be careful anyway. So I will go ahead and make that sneak roll of +2 against the 0 generic conflict rating of the hobgoblins, which is at a -1 for their being drunk and drugged, and another -1 for the jungle the heavy vegetation that I wrote in. So they're at a net -2, are very unlikely to succeed. I've decided arbitrarily the first detection that they can try to make against Gortais' sneak is at medium range. So I'm going to go ahead and roll with an unlikely to succeed. 33, they fail. Plot stress increases by 1, up to 10. They will get another chance at close range, and with an 81, they fail again. So now Gortais is within striking distance. I have to make a final sneak versus notice in order to ambush and get surprise. All that surprise means is I get a free round where if I fail to do damage, they will not damage Gortais. They've only got a 20% chance. Let's see if my ambush is successful. And with a 23, yes, it is. Gortais jumps out of the underbrush, knife in hand, and 1 level of damage takes out 2 foes at a time, but because it's a pulpy setting, that doubles. So I'm going to take out 4 foes before they have a chance to react if I succeed with my knife fighting skill. All they get is their highest dodge or block. I'm assuming they don't have shields. So their highest dodge is going to be the generic conflict rating of 0. And my knife fighting skill is 1. Got a 65% chance, or likely to succeed. And with a 94, however, that doesn't mean that they can do any damage to me. It just means that they don't take any damage from Gortais. So he jumps out of the underbrush. They all act shocked and surprised, go, oh my gosh. And Gortais tries to get up and start attacking them. And they've managed to, despite being drunk and drugged with such a big botch, just Gortais doesn't manage to get at any of them in time until they manage to get their weapons out. I'm assuming blades or spears. Now we go into regular combat. Gortais has a knife. I'm assuming they have something like spears, but when I say knife, it's one of these practically short sword bladed knives made of bronze. And he gets another chance now, 65% likely to succeed. I can give him an extra bonus because they're drunk or drugged, but we'll hold off on that. With a 13, that was an easy success. And also, the plot stress was 12 at that point and goes up to 13. So this time I did just barely miss an unexpected event. Now, with that one attack, because it's a pulpy setting, and you take out 2 team or minions at a time instead of just 1 if it's an individual, Gortais manages to take out 4 of them in this entire round of combat. So he is a whirlwind of knife fighting, moving from one to the next and taking them out before they have a chance to do any firm damage to them. There are now 2 left. They are at -1, I believe, and Gortais is at a +1. I would say, let's ask the yes-no question, do they flee? I'll give that a 50-50. With a 73, they do not, which means we'll go into one more round. If Gortais gets this, then the combat is effectively over. And with a 34 against their -1, because they've dropped to just 2 members, Gortais wins the day. there are hobgoblin bodies lying about. Next, I can go live to determine the treasure. They were just 18 points worth of goblins, so I can roll a percentile die and add the 18. This is, by the way, an optional random treasure rewards Appendix X. There are different ways to decide on treasure. I just like the random way. With an 89 plus their 18, it's 107. With 107, it's cash or treasure worth 1 month's salary. I'll have to look up exactly how much that is based on Gortais' monthly income, but that's a nice, tidy amount of valued stuff. I'll probably roll up some random items to figure out what constitutes this treasure. And then we'll make a couple more yes-no questions around this artifact, and I'll do a little bit of study. But I'm going to cut out from that. You got to see a nice, tidy little combat. Thankfully, very easy for Gortais. This could have very easily gone a completely different direction off the rails with him in a lot of trouble. But he was fortunate that it was just the group of hobgoblins and nothing else. Don't need to ask for trouble. Don't need to do anything else. But I am going to ask some yes-no questions in a moment, and then I'll shut down the scene. Okay, well, the rest of that scene didn't go quite as I expected, but I did manage to see what we had for a reward, and 1 month's cash ends up being 100 silvers for Gortais, who is a struggling rogue. Of the things that were of value, the artifact itself that's in that area, which I've arbitrarily decided was a big obelisk, that has some sort of a value. I was going to ask, I didn't, I'll ask right now, does it have some sort of magical, magical portent, magical capability? I'll say that is very unlikely just because it's not a high magic sort of place. It's not high fantasy. With a 35, no, it's not magical. It just has some sort of residual value as a big obelisk, but Gortais is not going to be able to do anything with that. However, the rest of it is, I rolled a couple of just random items, starting with a chaining series of questions, which is described in the book. The first item was very likely, and that was the artifact. I actually got the result of something like big machinery, which I decided described the artifact itself that we rolled up as the artifact or object. So that's a big obelisk that has value, but is not really movable. The next piece is I managed to roll up randomly information about defense. So that I took as being some sort of a book. When I asked that yes-no question, it triggered an unexpected event. That unexpected event was a mission twist. So asking a couple more questions, I decided that the book was not written in a common tongue. It was not in Elandric Common. However, Gortais could tell enough of it that there were numbers and that it was about Artanes and that it had something to do with military. So I asked, are any of the... so then the unexpected event I rolled up randomly, and it turned out to be a mission twist, and the mission twist was to spy. So I decided that this now meant that there was something of an oops when Gortais went and attacked all the hobgoblins. He managed to take out the folks that knew why they were there and what they were doing there. So he really failed to research, and he kind of failed to spy. But I did get to ask, are any of them still alive enough to talk? So the answer to that was yes, so that was good. And then I followed that up with, do any of them speak common? And the answer to that is no, so that's bad. So Gortais ended up getting a hold of this book, looked in it, said, oh my gosh, this is something about Artanes troop strengths. These guys are up to some kind of no good. Searched from one hobgoblin to the other and then found one that was still alive and pulled an attempt to interrogate, who sent you, only to find out that the hobgoblin doesn't speak his language, so probably mutters some things in some foreign tongue. And getting a wounded hobgoblin minion back across a chasm and all the way back to the city of Artanes. I decided that's not even in the realm of realistic, so we are not going to do that. So that was a good place to close the scene, and that is where the scene closed with Gortais holding the book, looking at the obelisk, wounded and dying hobgoblins around, and him picking up silvers and the book. And oh, by the way, again, arbitrarily using the percentile dice, I sort of said, what is the percentage value of each one of these things of the total 100 silver piece take? 50 silvers are in cash that Gortais can take with him immediately. The book itself, when he brings it back to his terrain Orikos, will be worth the other 50 silvers to say, well done, this is an important piece of information that we needed to secure. So that's where we keep things. I'm going to do one more final cutscene to wrap things up, and that'll be a wrap. Here's the final cutscene and a retrospective of what happened, and it kind of rocks. It was very unexpected what happened. So, as always, I've tried yet again to have Gortais and Rayan meet in a tavern. It's just never bound to happen because I got my 3 random scene qualities, and they turned out to be magic or machinery, so in this case magic, breezy, and a shop or store. So I decided that this must have been some sort of a taking the book to a proprietor of languages who also runs not a magic shop per se, because there are no such things, but kind of more of a curio and oddities kind of place with Eye of Newt and so forth. And the proprietor, I didn't give a name, but knowledgeable about various languages. So here's how the scene opened with him in the cluttered shop, cluttered but breezy shop that was working with this book while there's kind of semi-magical or at least mystical things around in the store. So the fella is investigating the book, and I asked a yes/no question of, what was the point? What was the point of the book? And that's where, if you're looking to try and figure out what's going on with a particular thing, if all else fails and you kind of don't know where to turn, roll a rationale, because a rationale will give you a direction of what's going on. So when I asked what the book is about, I rolled a rationale. It gave me a 14 of hurt and suffering. So trying to figure out then, okay, what does hurt and suffering have to do with this book? I turned back and said, well, does it have to do with the hobgoblins themselves? Maybe there's a hobgoblin nation or tribal rivalries or something like that. And that came back as yes. So the hobgoblins are unhappy about Artanes, probably because there are farmers and gosh knows goat herds and others that are expanding beyond their bounds. But then when I rolled that, I also triggered an unexpected event, because the plot stress had gone up to 16 at that point, and I rolled a 16. So that dropped plot stress in half to 8. But what I rolled for plot stress is that a scene quality intrudes, and the scene quality in this case was magic. So then I asked, is it the book that's exhibiting this magic? And so then I figured, this guy's bent over it looking at the book's details. Does that mean that the book is magically trapped? Another yes. So then you get to, I forgot to ask. I forgot to mention, the thing that triggered it was the question of, does this book come from an agent inside the city? That's what then happened with magic intruded to that yes answer. Then it determined that it's a trap. And then it determined that not only is it a trap, but it wasn't just that it erased the book, but it did something harmful. And so the book exploded into this black goo and self-destructed. And that's where I then got to ask, is anyone hurt? And the answer was yes. And looking around, it turned out to be the proprietor. So a good thing I didn't write up too much about the proprietor of the curio shop, because whether or not he got killed. He seriously was injured when the book exploded in his hands from some sort of magic trap as he was reading from it, from whatever language it was translated into. I'm guessing some kind of goblin dialect. And so he got to the point of saying, yes, there's a local agent here, and his name is Kaboom. So that's where we get to our rather, let's say, it's a rather obtuse or it's a rather ambiguous ending here. And then my final question was, did we get the name of the agent in the city? And the answer to that is no. So I did have a final yes-no question that I decided to handwave was, does Gortais still get his 50 silvers? I kind of figured he already got paid when he dropped off the book to say, look, this has got all sorts of stuff in it, and he was present with Gortais just as a formality to be part of figuring out what this book was all about and find out key information. So Gortais and Rayan got to watch as this thing blew up, badly injured, if not killed, the proprietor without revealing any of its secrets. That means that there's something more than just hobgoblins at play, because hobgoblins don't know magic. But then we knew that because hobgoblins also don't typically study troop movements inside, or troop strengths and capabilities inside cities. So this leaves a number of hanging threads of, there's an agent in the city. Who is this agent? Who are they working for? What is this magic ability? Where is that coming from? And who is bringing that to the overall game? How are the hobgoblin tribes involved with all of this? What is this artifact that's off in the distance in this jungly, viney, lush area? So there's lots of interesting new threads that could come up. The nice thing here is that, as I mentioned earlier, this is actually an extension of a game that I didn't record, where Gortais was trying to get to the same area and was stopped by a bunch of goblins that waylaid him that pretty much would have done him in if he hadn't just dropped off and given them all their stuff and sort of shown, like, look, I'm now unarmed and I'm going to run like heck. Just take my stuff, please. So that's where we leave this adventure. I hope that there were some insights here as to how the game is played. And thanks for tuning in.